If you clicked on this, you might be wondering how to design and build apps that make millions. Whether you're a solo founder, or you're a founder at a funded startup, or you just have a big app idea that you want to put out into the world. I know how difficult it is because for the last 15 years, I've been designing apps and advising startups on product and design. And that's why today I want to take you behind the scenes into my Notion document and through my exact 6 principles that I have followed to design apps that have gone on to make and raise millions in funding so that you can make your next big app idea even better. So let's get into the document and have a look at the principles.
Build great product. Build great product.
So this is my document with my 6 principles that I've used to design apps for startups that have been really successful. And these are 6 principles that you can follow when building your own products. Now that you can build an app or a website or a web app with AI tools, these are just some really good principles to bear in mind when you're designing anything and when you're building anything that you think that you're going to do seriously as a business idea, as a startup idea that you have plans to kind of monetize and make money from. And I would just use this as a list to reference from like every now and then. Not all great products hit every single one of these principles, but it is a good reference point to have when you're reflecting on what you're making and what you're building. So I've got a bunch of tabs along the top here, which are just my references and my examples for each of these principles. So I'll go through some examples of other apps and products that are doing each principle really well, just to showcase what I mean. So let's go through these principles one by one. And so let's go through these principles one by one. So I'll start off with principle 1. That is to be opinionated. Good apps, good startups, good products, they stand for something. And think of this as the rallying cry that brings your community and your audience together. This is a strong belief that you should have that might be counterintuitive or go against the prevailing narrative in your market or industry. And it can be like a refreshing take, basically. What I use as a gauge for this is that when you tell someone this belief or this opinion, and by not just anyone, but someone who's in the industry or in the market or matches your customer profile, they go, yes, finally someone is saying this thing. That's exactly what I've been thinking this whole time, or that's exactly what I was looking for. There needs to be someone doing this in this space. So you really want to like capture that attention and imagination from people when you tell them your opinion that you have. And when you're designing and thinking of, okay, I've got an app idea, so how do I make it opinionated? So think about what problem does your app solve? And what's the opinion that you have about that problem and the way that you're solving it, almost your unique kind of way of solving it. And so I'll take you through like a couple of examples in a second, but this is kind of basically your North Star. This is your guiding principle, your guiding belief. And another way of thinking about it is that this is the belief that you strongly hold that is going to keep you going when times start to get tough, or like when your product isn't working, when nobody is downloading or signing up for your app, when you're getting no traffic to the website. This is the thing that's going to keep you going. And so it's good to be opinionated in a way that you actually fundamentally believe and matches with a belief that you hold as well. So I want to take you through a few examples of companies who have done this really well. They have a very strong opinion. This often comes across in the brand vision or mission for the company. So the first one that I want to show you is Airbnb. This isn't the Airbnb website, but this is the website for the design studio that did the Airbnb branding. And their whole statement around the new Airbnb branding was this idea of belonging anywhere. That everyone should be able to feel like they belong anywhere. And so Airbnb have this opinion that we should be able to belong anywhere. That's what we believe. That's what we stand for. Some people don't believe that. But that's what we believe. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. That's the vision we're trying to accomplish through our app and our business and our product. and the way that we serve our customers. Another company that I think does this well is Trello, even though this is a bit more like on the boring side, on the very like functional productivity app kind of side. So their belief here that you can see on the page is tackle your to-dos from anywhere. So they're saying, we believe that like we want to solve a problem with productivity. We believe that our app can help people be more productive. And the way that we believe that we're doing that is that we allow people to tackle their to-dos from anywhere. That's our unique view on a solution for this problem. So again, like when you're thinking about how am I going to build my app idea? How am I going to build my product idea? What is the way that you're solving the problem that is different to other people? And how can you communicate that in just a few words or a sentence really, really succinctly? And that is going to be something that's going to make you stand out or your app stand out. Another company that I think do this really, really well is Canva. They have this whole vision around empowering the world to design and this idea that everyone should be able to be a designer. And so their mission and their focus for their app is really about helping everybody be able to design. It's not about helping the designers to be able to design better or to help teach everyone how to use this really complex tool or how to design perfect, ads or perfect posters or perfect whatever. It's about how can we help everyone be able to design. Everyone is a designer, so let's help them be able to be a designer. It's a really, really clear vision and mission statement, and it's a very, very strong opinion that they have that everyone should be able to be a designer. The next principle that I have here is to be aesthetic. And what do I mean by this? It's not just about having an app that looks good. It's also about having an app that feels really good to use. So in a world where we can use AI tools to build almost any app or website that you can imagine, you can even envision a world where we get to a point where you can just type into a lovable, build an Airbnb competitor that's better. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. Obviously, there's so much other stuff that goes into making Airbnb successful as a company, and all of that stuff that they've built up over many, many years of growth. But in terms of creating an app that can look and work better, you could feasibly do that in the future with AI. So be aesthetic is about counteracting that ability to create anything by creating something that feels magical and effortless to use. This is a bit wishy-washy and it's a bit intangible. And the way that I would think about this when you're building or designing your product, or you have an app idea, is that how does this feel for someone to use? How do I want this to feel? What sense do I want to give to people when they use this? And that should tie that in with your opinion that you've got. So if your opinion, like Trello, for example, is that we want to be able to let people tackle their to-dos from anywhere, then the way that we can be aesthetic is to create a really slick, simple, streamlined interface that's designed for mobile, that's going to work wherever people are using it, that are these very quick interactions that don't require me to spend a lot of time in the product. And often I think the be aesthetic principle here works best when it's just focusing on one really, really magical and specific interaction in an app or a product, and just making that the best it can possibly be. So when you're thinking about designing and building your app, think about what is that one interaction that's really, really critical to solving this problem that I'm solving with this app. What one thing in my app are people going to be doing again and again and again that I can just focus most of my effort on making that one interaction feel as good and look as nice as it possibly can be. Some examples that I can take you through for this would be Mac OS X, and maybe not now, but when it first came out, I think people were very, very familiar. This is me showing my age. Maybe this is 15 years ago. People were very, very familiar with Microsoft Windows as an interface, but it was very, very functional. And I think up until that point, operating systems for personal computers were very, very clunky. They were very, very square and rigid. And OS X just really broke the mold for that, for something that felt and looked completely different. Everything just felt so much different to an operating system that people were familiar with using, that it just captured the imagination and inspired a generation of creatives, I think. Another really, really good example of this be aesthetic principle, I think, is Notion. Now, Notion, I know a lot of people are split on like whether they like or don't like Notion. I think Notion is an incredible app, and it just feels so completely different to use. It doesn't necessarily look like the most amazing product. Like, a lot of it is very, very functional, actually. But when you're using it, it just feels different. It feels like, oh, this is how document editing and creating should be. And this is why I think this is very, very intangible, this principle. So the way I would approach this principle, and to try and design and build apps that are aesthetic, is to just test your product regularly and to actually use it as if a user was going through and, signing up for it and using those key features. Think about, is this part of my app a key thing that I'm going to be doing time and time again? Does it feel the way that I want it to feel? And what things could I do to make it feel better? And just focus on that one interaction that's really, really critical for your app. Another really, really good example of this, I think, is Screen Studio, which I'm actually using right now. I love Screen Studio. It's basically like, it takes all of the faff of like editing and recording videos like this, from tools like Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro, which are like really in-depth, complicated editing software, to just making it super, super easy to create this one type of video and have it look incredible with all of the kind of settings and the backgrounds and the kind of border, radiuses on the camera feed that I've got here. When you go into editing this video, it's kind of all set up there for you. They've solved that problem in a really, really aesthetic way that is pleasing to use, and it feels super, super easy and amazing. And so they just focused on that one use case of like, I want to create this specific type of video and make it look amazing and make it easy to kind of get that to a point very, very quickly where it's a professional quality that I can then export or send to somebody. And it's a great example of this be aesthetic principle. Quick break in the episode to talk about my design agency, Telescope. Telescope is a tailor-made design service for ambitious and early-stage startups. We've helped clients go on to raise millions, win startup awards, and unlock new product growth opportunities and new business opportunities for their startup. You can check out the link in the description or go to telescope.design to find out more. Back to the episode. The third principle here is be tangible, and I think this is a really, really critical one. Often this really shows up in the key value proposition, like the main title on a website or on an app page or on the App Store. So if you have a look at the website and that first title like makes a lot of sense and is really, really clear, that usually means they've got this be tangible principle done really, really well. And because of the opportunity that we have now with AI tools to create all of these new types of products, so previously where startups would get traditional funding from venture capital to go away and to build an app or a product and spend a lot of money developing it, they really had to be like a lot more broad with their solutions because they needed to bring in as many users as possible to be able to make back that money so that the investors would get a return on their investment. Now, anyone can go on any of these AI tools and build their own apps and products. And so the actual cost for doing that is almost zero. And where you have that, this opens up a huge opportunity to be able to go and solve all of these niche problems with apps and software that we weren't able to do before. And what that basically means is that you're free to go niche in order to be more tangible. And the more specific, the more valuable your solution is. So this is something that Alex Hormozy talks about and a bunch of other businessy type of people, although I don't listen to a lot of their stuff. But one really, really good principle to be aware of is that the more specific you go with your solution, the more valuable people will perceive it to be. Because there are less people that meet that specific criteria, they will value it so much more because it is so specific to exactly what they need. And I would say here, in order to be tangible, you also need to be really, really, really simple. So avoiding complex words, avoiding long sentences, and avoiding phrases unless your customer, this is ideal customer profile, unless your target customer knows those phrases and words really, really, really well and it's standard for the industry. I would just keep things as simple as possible. And you can use ChatGPT or Claude or any of the large language models for this, just to say, like, explain this to me as if I was a 5-year-old. Type in your idea for what you think your value proposition is, your one-liner or your one sentence or your elevator pitch, and just get AI to like refine that down to like a few words or a really short sentence for you, and create a load of variations on that, and then just pick the ones that you think, and even edit those if you need to. Just pick the ones that you think are the most tangible for your app idea. And actually, this is a really, really good way of figuring out if your idea is actually refined enough or not yet, or whether you need to kind of go back and have a bit more of a think about what solution you're actually solving and how you want to communicate that best. Some really, really good examples of this are Cursor. So their headline is the AI code editor. That's what it is. It's very, very clear. You get it immediately. It's a code editing interface, and it's the AI version of a code editor. So you know exactly what it is. Lovable does this really, really well. Their tagline is idea to app in seconds. It's super, super tangible. You have an idea, you get an app, and you'll do it in seconds. Super, super clear. I love that. Tally is a really, really good example of this as well. So their way of doing that principle of be tangible is to say we are the simplest way to create forms. This actually really, really nicely ties into that first principle of being opinionated. And so they're saying, like, we believe forms that should be really, really simple. Therefore, what we are is the simplest way to create forms. And I know exactly what that means and what that is going to be before I even get into the product almost. Finally, the last example for this one, which I wanted to share, was Opus Clip, which is a tool that converts long form videos into short form video clips. And their tagline here is 1 long video, 10 viral clips, create 10 times faster. It's just super, super clear, super, super tangible, and super, super immediate. You get it straight away. And so think about, for your app idea, think about how can I get that one-liner just super, super clear and succinct. Even if that's really, really niche, maybe you need to make it more niche than you have it at the moment in order for that to be really tangible. And then use AI to kind of iterate and work out what that right tagline, that right one-liner is going to be. Another thing on the be tangible principle is that it should also be really tangible when you use the product. So that one-liner, that value proposition, should translate as you go through signing up to the product, using the first features. If you can help a user get to the value as quickly as possible when they get into the product and get something out of it that's useful, then that often helps to making the product and the app as tangible as possible. The fourth principle here is to be emotional, and this is about connecting your app experience to an emotional reaction that is very human. And also, one way of doing this really well is to get the user to recognize this themselves. So my example of that is an app called Headspace. I think pretty much everyone knows what Headspace is. If you don't, it's a meditation app and personal well-being app. What they do in their onboarding, which is really, really interesting, is they get you to do a breathing exercise as part of setting up your account. But then the key thing here is that after you do the breathing exercise when you're setting up your account in Headspace, they ask you, how did that make you feel? And what that does is that connects your emotional reaction to the breathing exercise to the act of using Headspace. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to connect the emotion that a user feels to the act of using your app. That makes it sticky in their memory. So emotional experiences, whether they're negative or positive, stick more in our memories, and that makes it easier for us to build habits, and also it makes us more likely to go back and use that thing or do that thing again. So we're trying to trigger a positive emotional reaction, and then we want to connect that emotional reaction to the act of using the product. So if you have an app idea, or if you're building or designing an app, think about, what is the emotion that I want to elicit in someone when they're using this product? And where does that emotion happen in the journey of using my app? And when you figure out what that point is, you can focus on making that point of the app experience as positive as you can, but also use messaging and interactions to help the user, the person in the app, to connect that emotional experience to the act of using your app, even if that's just a very, very straightforward way of doing it, like Headspace do, where they say, how did that make you feel? And this is about providing a feeling, not just a solution to a problem. So as I was saying, the feelings stick in our memory, the solutions are kind of a one-off thing. Some other examples that do this really, really well. One is an app called Dot. This is an AI app, an AI journaling app that grows with you. And as you can see from the design here, so a lot of the way that you can do this kind of emotional feeling app design is in the way that it looks and feels, and in the way that those interactions kind of animate and move. And so this is supposed to be an AI journal that grows with you. The idea is it's very organic, it's very fluid, it's not static, it's dynamic. And so they've created this app design that kind of zooms in and zooms out and is very like blurry at the edges and is kind of fuzzy and allows you to kind of navigate around it in this very, very dynamic and fluid way. So think about when you're designing and building your apps, also think about, how can I design this in a way that reflects the emotion that I want to convey in the product as well? Another really great example of this is Cora by a company called Every. They are an AI content and production company, but also they incubate AI products themselves as well. And they are kind of at the forefront of AI thinking at the moment. And their product, Cora, is all about making email enjoyable again. And so they really, if you go even just on the landing page here, they're really tapping into that emotional feeling and taking you on a journey from how do you feel at the moment, if that's bad, going through to how you feel with using that app. And that's another really, really interesting way of doing this that you can think about when you're designing and building your own apps, is what is the status quo for someone at the moment, for the problem that you're solving, and why is that bad? And then think about, what is the solution? What is the emotional feeling of the solution that you're offering? And why is that different to the status quo? And then communicate that journey, even if it's just like this, like scrolling down the landing page, going from, we all dread email, it's an endless to-do list written by everyone all at once, to like, okay, the story is all of this horrible stuff is collected up into this envelope, and I'm scrolling down, it's put into this envelope, and then out of the other side comes this lovely handwritten note that's a summary of all of my things that are going on, set against this background of almost like spring weather with this open kind of sky, a feeling of something natural, a feeling of something organic, with this kind of fluid font that you've got here as well. And it just feels completely different to what your traditional kind of email experience would be, and they take you on that journey really, really well. And that is the emotional part of that product. The fifth principle here is about being noteworthy. This is where shares and referrals and people talking about your app is good. You need to create something really that makes people go, oh, I need to tell this person about this right now. They're going to be so into this, or they're going to love this, or, oh, I need to share this right now because this is really important, or I need to show someone this because I just love what they're trying to do. So one of the ways that you can do this is by thinking about how are you conceptually changing the paradigm? And this is a little bit on that emotional principle as well, of what is the existing world that people are in, and what is the world that you are taking them to? How are you drastically altering an existing thing that someone is doing, or an existing belief that someone has, and making that so different? And how can you show that to people instead of just telling them about it? It's very, very easy to just tell people what you're doing, but it's very, very hard to show that. A good way of doing this when you're designing or building an app is to show people through the app experience. So this is where we can go back to that idea of that one magical interaction to think, how does that best show what we are trying, what our vision is, what we're trying to achieve, what our opinion is? And also, part of this being noteworthy and getting shares and referrals and people talking about your app is to be able to tap into the moment that's happening right now. A really, really good company that have continually done this over their lifespan is a company called Framer. A lot of you already know what Framer are, but you might know them more as a no-code website creation tool, which is what they are at the moment. And that really taps into this moment right now where a lot of people are interested in that. A lot of people are trying to do that. You have Webflow, you have a bunch of other ones that are doing this as well. But Framer previously was a design prototyping tool, and it sat along companies like InVision and Figma and a bunch of other ones that have kind of died and don't exist anymore. But what Framer have done continuously really, really well is to keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on and to consistently and successfully pivot their company towards the movement that is happening at the moment so that people will talk about it and bring attention to their app. Some other examples of this being noteworthy would be Polymet, which is a product, which is a Y Combinator backed startup, which is a product that I reviewed recently on my channel, which is an AI product designer. And so that's tapping into this moment that is happening right now around vibe coding, vibe marketing, vibe designing, using AI to design apps and websites and products. Another company that I want to talk about that is doing this be noteworthy principle really, really well is Manus. They are a Chinese-based company who have probably one of the most unique AI agent tools on the market. And this is really like noteworthy because of the app experience itself. So this experience with this product is so much different to other AI agent tools and so much easier. They have a very, very specific and unique way of doing it, and that's another way that you can be noteworthy as well. So if you're designing a product or if you have an app idea, think about, what does this tap into that people are talking about right now, and how can I maybe change what I want to create here to fit into kind of the prevailing narrative in culture or the way that I feel that things are going. And all you have to do is spend a bit of time on social. There's a bunch of other tools as well, like Gummy Search, that you can use to search for communities online that are talking about the thing that the problem that you want to solve or the thing that you want to build, and look at, what are people talking about in this space? What's the overarching kind of feeling around this sort of app? Are other people creating these apps already? Where did they succeed and where did they fail? And how can you be different and how can you stand out? Another app that I think is doing this be noteworthy principle really, really well is Peter Level's flight sim game. I will only talk about this very briefly, but if you don't know, Peter Levels is one of the kind of biggest bootstrap startup founders in the world, and he has made hundreds of thousands of dollars through the apps and the products that he has built online, and he does it all by himself. But what he did recently was to use an AI coding tool to build a video game using a JavaScript language called 3.js, which, if you're not familiar, is just basically 3D stuff in a web browser. So it's a video game in your browser that you can play, basically. It's a flight simulator. But what he tapped into, which is really, really interesting, is this AI generated coding going into a new space that people had never really thought about taking it before, which was creating video games. And being one of the first people to kind of do that and get involved in that space meant that he had a lot of momentum, a lot of attention, and a lot of focus on this flight simulator game that he was building. And that generated a huge amount of community involvement into creating other video games. And he also was able to generate thousands and thousands of dollars through advertising through this flight sim game as well. Now, this example is only just like a one-off, like a flash in the pan kind of app idea, but those are, equally as valid as long-term app and startup ideas as well. It just really depends on what you want to create, and you need to kind of know that going in. So think about like, okay, if I tap into this thing that people are talking about right now, is it going to be something that's really, really short term, or is it going to be something that's really, really long term? But one red flag that I would mention for this principle of being noteworthy is that make sure you do not compromise your opinion, your belief, your original vision for the sake of just tapping into something that's going to get attention. It all needs to align. So what we're looking for is cultural moments and conversations in communities that align with your belief and your vision, not the other way around. So finally, principle 6 here is about being elevated. This sounds again like pretty fluffy, but being elevated is about doing one thing so well that you overcome any shortcomings or poor product experience that you might have. So think about this as like an app that just has like one killer feature, but the whole thing looks terrible. That's kind of like what we're doing here with this principle. This is my principle for that's like my green light for like startups that are going to go on to do well. Usually a really, really good sign in the early stages of startup and app development is that loads of people are using it, loads of people really, really like it, but it looks and functions absolutely terribly. Because that can be improved, and that will only elevate all of the rest of the people already using it and all of the value that they're already getting. So what you're looking for here is not necessarily to design something that is perfect. You're looking to create something that solves one problem so well that people love it, despite the fact that it may not look incredible. As a way of demonstrating this, a lot of startups have been born from just spreadsheets or documents or WhatsApp chat. One of the examples that I have in my list here, Nomad List, which is another website that was created by Peter Levels, which is to help people who are digital nomads around the world find the best cities and get information on different cities to kind of live and work in as they're traveling around. That started as a spreadsheet that he sold, basically, and then that idea turned into a website just because so many people wanted it. It got so much traction, and there was so much interest in that problem being solved in that way. And so don't over-engineer your first app, your first solution. Just think about what is the best way that I can solve this problem, and what is the quickest and most efficient way that I can execute that in order to prove that people actually want this solution. And you want to be able to put something out into the world, get a reaction back from people, and then get those early signals, even if it's just from one or two people, where someone will say, thanks, I loved this, it solved my problem perfectly, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next. Or even just like a thumbs up emoji. Like any tiny thing here is like good validation for you to keep going. Some other examples of this be elevated principle would be Netflix, where it's just unlimited films, TV programs, and more. Like there are some bad parts of the app experience, not so much now because they've refined it so much over time, and they have a huge team doing this, working on this app. But initially, I think like the idea that you could just get all of this stuff to stream was just like such a good value and solved such a big problem of like renting films, physically, that everything else was just like, well, I don't mind about that because I get access to all of this crazy amount of stuff. And another example of this same kind of thing playing out is a company called Splice, which is basically a subscription that gets you access to millions of royalty-free samples for music production. And pretty much all music producers at least all the music producers that I know and in the space use Splice. Even if they don't use it actively, they have a Splice subscription because they just like to have that there, like on tap, to be able to get anything that they need, just if they need to drop something quickly into their production. And so, you know, the rest of the product experience isn't incredible. It does a job, but that primary value of just getting access to all of that stuff is so strong that it overcomes any other part of the experience. So that was my 6 principles to designing and building apps that can make millions. Hopefully you can apply these principles to help your apps and products grow. And if you want a copy of this Notion template, just head over to buildgreatproducts.com, where you can sign up to my newsletter and get it for free. If you liked this, then subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Build great products. Build great products.